Subscribe to Storylab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1, Tuesday Evening. Jake Ellison had always prided himself on reading people. As a forensic accountant who'd spent 15 years unraveling financial crimes for federal prosecutors, he learned to spot inconsistencies. The nervous tells, the overcompensating smiles, the stories that didn't quite add up. Yet somehow, he'd missed the signs in his own home. The Tuesday evening started like any other. Jake stood in the kitchen of their suburban Philadelphia home, stirring pasta sauce while monitoring the simmering pot of water. Through the window, he could see the autumn leaves collecting in the backyard, a task he'd been meaning to get to all week. His phone buzzed with a work email, another case, another company executive cooking the books. He made a mental note to review the files after dinner. The front door burst open with more force than usual. His daughter Riley, 8 years old with her mother's dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, rushed inside with her soccer bag dragging behind her. Jake noticed immediately that something was wrong. Riley's eyes were red-rimmed, and she clutched something against her chest. "Hey, champ," Jake said, turning down the burner. "How was practice? Coach Jenkins work you guys hard today?" Riley didn't respond with her usual enthusiastic recap of drills and scrimmages. Instead, she dropped her bag by the door and walked slowly into the kitchen. Her chin trembled. "Daddy," she whispered, glancing toward the staircase. Veronica, Jake's wife of 10 years, was upstairs in her home office where she'd been spending increasing amounts of time lately. "Promise not to be upset." Jake knelt down to her level, his stomach tightening. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Riley's composure crumbled. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she thrust a manila envelope toward him. "Coach's wife is a lawyer. She said Mommy's been lying about something big. She told me you need to see this. She made me promise to give it only to you when Mommy wasn't around." Jake's hands trembled slightly as he took the envelope. Miranda Jenkins's law firm logo was embossed in the corner. Jenkins and Associates, Family Law. His mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. An affair? Divorce papers? But why give them through Riley? "Go wash up for dinner, okay?" Jake said gently, forcing a calm smile. "Everything's going to be fine." Riley nodded uncertainly and headed upstairs. Jake heard her bedroom door close. Then Veronica's office door opened briefly. "Riley? That you?" his wife called. "Yeah, I'm home." Riley called back, her voice surprisingly steady. Jake waited until he heard Veronica's door close again. Then he opened the envelope with fingers that had suddenly gone cold. Inside were 3 items: a handwritten note on legal letterhead, a USB drive, and several printed photographs. Jake read the note first. "Mr. Ellison, my name is Miranda Jenkins. We've met briefly at soccer practices. I'm an attorney specializing in family law, but more importantly, I'm someone who can't stand by and watch what's happening to you. I discovered this information by accident 3 weeks ago. My husband Chris mentioned that Veronica had asked him to testify about your erratic behavior at Riley's games, behavior I've never witnessed, and neither has he. It struck me as odd, so I did some digging through public records and professional channels. What I found is deeply disturbing. Your wife has been building a case to have you declared mentally incompetent. The USB drive contains audio recordings from your home. I believe from a nanny cam or similar device that you may not know about. Documents and communications between your wife and Dr. Roman Murray, a psychiatrist who's been crafting a false diagnosis without ever meeting you. The photographs show your wife with Dr. Murray. They're having an affair, but it's more than that. They're planning to have you committed to a psychiatric facility, then gain control of your assets through a conservatorship. Once that's done, based on what I've heard in the recordings, they plan to keep you medicated and institutionalized indefinitely. I'm risking my professional reputation by sharing this, but I have a daughter too. If someone were doing this to my husband, I'd want to know. You need to act quickly and carefully. They're planning to move forward within the next 2 weeks. I've made copies of everything and placed them in a secure location. Contact me at my personal number below, not through my firm. Trust no one else until we can figure this out. Miranda. Jake read the note twice, his pulse thundering in his ears. It couldn't be real. Veronica, his wife, the woman he'd built a life with, who'd given him Riley, planning something this monstrous? But even as denial surged through him, pieces clicked into place. Veronica's suggestion 3 months ago that he should talk to someone about his stress. The way she'd been documenting every small argument, every forgotten task. Her insistence that he'd been acting strange at Riley's soccer games, though he couldn't remember doing anything unusual. The bottle of prescription anti-anxiety medication that had appeared in the bathroom cabinet. Pills he'd never taken but couldn't remember not picking up from the pharmacy. His hands shook harder as he looked at the photographs. They were date-stamped from various locations over the past 6 months. Veronica and a man Jake didn't recognize entering a hotel, sitting close together at a dim restaurant, kissing in the front seat of a car. The man was handsome in a calculated way. Perfect teeth, expensive haircut, the kind of guy who'd look at home in a medical office or country club. Dr. Roman Murray, a psychiatrist who was systematically destroying Jake's life. Jake pocketed the USB drive and photographs, then slid the note back into the envelope. He needed to think. His forensic training kicked in. When building a case, you gathered evidence methodically, you verified sources, you looked for patterns and corroboration. He pulled out his phone and texted the number from Miranda's note. "This is Jake Ellison. I received your package. Can we meet tomorrow?" The response came within seconds. "Yes. Bailey's Coffee Shop on Marlton Pike. 7 a.m. Come alone and check for tracking devices on your phone and car first. They may be monitoring you." Jake's blood ran cold. Tracking devices? How long had this been going on? "Jake!" Veronica's voice floated down from upstairs, sweet and concerned. "Is dinner almost ready?" "I'm starving." He looked up at the ceiling, visualizing her in her office, his wife of 10 years, the mother of his child. And now, apparently, the architect of his destruction. 5 minutes, he called back, his voice remarkably steady. Jake Ellison had spent his career following money trails and exposing liars. Now he'd need every skill he'd ever learned, not to build a case against strangers, but to dismantle a conspiracy designed by the person who knew him better than anyone else in the world. And he needed to do it without letting her know that he knew. Chapter 2. The Evidence. Jake barely slept that night. He lay in bed next to Veronica, listening to her steady breathing, wondering how someone could sleep so peacefully while plotting such calculated cruelty. Every shift she made caused him to tense, hyper-aware of her proximity in a way that had nothing to do with intimacy and everything to do with threat assessment. At 5:30 a.m., he gave up on sleep and eased out of bed. Veronica stirred slightly but didn't wake. Jake dressed quietly in the dark, grabbed his running shoes, and headed downstairs. It wasn't unusual for him to go on early morning runs. It would raise no suspicion. Before leaving, he checked his phone and cars Miranda had advised. In the wheel well of his Toyota, he found a small magnetic GPS tracker. The discovery sent ice through his veins. He left it in place. Removing it would tip them off, but photographed it and noted the serial number. At 6:45 a.m., Jake pulled into the parking lot of Bailey's Coffee Shop, a local spot he'd been to dozens of times. He'd taken a deliberately winding route, checking his mirrors constantly for tails. His forensic work had occasionally involved surveillance operations with federal agents. Those skills came flooding back now. Miranda Jenkins was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a clear view of the entrance. She was a striking woman in her early 40s, with sharp eyes that suggested she missed very little. When Jake approached, she gestured for him to sit. "No one followed you?" she asked immediately. "I don't think so. Found the GPS tracker you warned about. Leave it active. Act normal." She slid a small RF detector across the table. "Your phone. Check it." Jake ran the device over his phone. It remained silent. "Clean. Good. They probably don't think they need to bug your phone yet. You're supposed to be too mentally unstable to realize what's happening." Miranda's expression was grim. "Did you look at the USB drive?" "Not yet. Veronica was home all night." "Do it today, somewhere she can't see. But first, I need to brief you on what I found." Miranda pulled out a leather portfolio. "I've been in family law for 17 years. I've seen every variation of custody battles, asset disputes, and marital betrayal. But this is something else." She opened the portfolio to reveal a timeline. 6 months ago, your wife Veronica began consulting with Dr. Roman Murray. He's a psychiatrist, but not the ethical kind. He's been sued twice for malpractice, once for improper diagnosis, once for improper relationship with a patient. Both cases were settled with NDAs. Jake's jaw clenched. How'd you find that? I have connections in the legal community. When your wife started asking my husband to document your erratic behavior, I got curious. I pulled Murray's records. She tapped the timeline. Here's their pattern. Veronica feeds Murray observations about your mental state. Murray creates a psychiatric evaluation without ever meeting you, diagnosing you with severe anxiety, depression, and early-stage psychotic breaks. That diagnosis gets filed with a friendly judge. Then what? Then they manufacture a crisis. Maybe you have a breakdown at work or a violent incident at home, all staged, all documented. With Murray's diagnosis already on file, they petition for an emergency psychiatric hold. 72 hours becomes a week, becomes indefinite. Murray prescribes heavy medication, and you're too drugged to defend yourself. Veronica gets emergency conservatorship, controls all assets, and you're trapped. Jake's hands formed fists on the table. And Riley, Veronica gets full custody. You're declared unfit. Miranda's expression softened. But here's the thing. The USB drive has recordings from your home. Veronica and Murray discussing the plan explicitly. They got cocky, thought no one would find out. That's admissible evidence. How did you get these recordings? Miranda hesitated. 3 weeks ago, Veronica's sister called me. Different matter, a divorce of her own. During our consultation, she mentioned that Veronica had installed cameras in your house to monitor Jake's concerning behavior. She didn't think anything was wrong with it, but it stuck with me. After my husband mentioned Veronica's request for documentation, I put 2 and 2 together. So you hacked into their camera system? I prefer to say I accessed footage that was being illegally recorded without your consent in your own home. What I found made me physically ill. Miranda slid a paper across the table. Listen to the recordings today. File 007 specifically. It's Veronica and Murray in your bedroom, 2 weeks ago, discussing the timeline for having you committed. They talk about how once you're in the facility, they'll work on alienating Riley from you. Tell her you've become dangerous, that you don't remember her, that you're too sick to see her. Jake felt rage building in his chest, but he forced it down. Rage was counterproductive. He needed cold, calculated strategy. What's Murray's motivation? Just the affair. Money. Your money, specifically. Miranda pulled out another document. You and Veronica have assets worth approximately $2.3 million. Your house, investments, retirement accounts. Plus your annual income is around $180,000. Under conservatorship, Veronica controls all of it. She's promised Murray half once you're permanently institutionalized, and they've bled the accounts dry over a few years. They're planning to keep me locked up for years. The recordings suggest indefinitely. Maybe until... Miranda didn't finish the sentence, but Jake understood. Until he died, possibly by suicide or accident while committed. A mentally unstable man in a psychiatric facility? It would barely make the local news. Jake sat back, processing. His wife, the woman he'd loved, trusted, built a life with, was actively plotting not just his imprisonment, but potentially his death. And she was using their daughter as a pawn. I need to see those recordings, Jake said quietly. Then I need to plan. Be smart about this, Jake. Don't confront her. Don't do anything that could be twisted into the erratic behavior they're trying to establish. Right now, you have the element of surprise. What would you do? Jake asked. If this was happening to you? Miranda's eyes hardened. I'd burn their lives to the ground, legally and thoroughly. But you need to think about Riley. Whatever you do, she needs to come out of this okay. She's the only thing I care about. Then let me help you build a case. In family law, we fight dirty when we have to, but we fight smart. Miranda paused. There's something else. I think they're planning to move soon, maybe this week. Veronica called my husband yesterday, asking if he'd be willing to make a statement about an incident at last weekend's game. There was no incident, but she's trying to create one retroactively. Jake remembered last weekend's game. He'd been chatting with other parents, watching Riley play, completely normal. Veronica hadn't even been there. She claimed a work emergency. So they're accelerating the timeline. Yes, which means we need to move faster. Jake stood. I'll review the recordings today, then we meet again tonight. I need to understand every detail of their plan before I can counter it. Jake, Miranda caught his arm. Whatever you're planning, remember, they've underestimated you. Use that. As Jake drove away from the coffee shop, his mind was already working through possibilities. Veronica and Murray had made one critical mistake. They'd assumed he was an easy target, someone who'd go down without a fight. They'd forgotten who they were dealing with. Jake had spent 15 years hunting sophisticated white-collar criminals who thought they were untouchable. He knew how to follow money, gather evidence, and build cases that destroyed lives in courtrooms. Veronica and Murray wanted to make him look crazy? Fine. He'd let them think they were succeeding. And while they were congratulating themselves, he'd be building a trap they'd never see coming. Chapter 3. The Plan. Jake spent Wednesday in his home office with the door locked, headphones on, reviewing the USB drive's contents. What he heard made his stomach turn. File 007 was damning. Veronica's voice, clear and cold. He'll never see it coming. Jake's so wrapped up in his work, so trusting. By the time he realizes something's wrong, he'll already be in the facility. Roman Murray's response. And you're sure he doesn't suspect anything? No questions about the cameras, the documentation? Nothing. I've been careful. The pills I've been slipping into his coffee are low dose, just enough to make him foggy sometimes, forgetful. Combined with the stress I've been manufacturing, it builds the narrative perfectly. Jake's hand tightened on his mouse. She'd been drugging him. That explained the moments of confusion he'd attributed to work stress, the forgotten conversations, the strange fugue states. Murray continued. The judge is sympathetic. I've worked with him before on similar cases. Once we get the emergency order, the 72-hour hold becomes a longer evaluation. Then we have time to really establish the incompetency. Heavy sedation for the first few weeks. Tell the staff he's violent, a danger to himself. By the time anyone questions it, the legal framework is solid. And Riley? Veronica's voice was clinical, detached. Kids are resilient. After a few months of supervised visits where Jake is clearly medicated and confused, she'll stop asking to see him. We tell her he doesn't remember her, that his illness makes him scary. Children naturally protect themselves from trauma. She'll distance herself emotionally. Good. I want full custody with no complications. There was a pause, then the sound of movement. Murray's voice dropped lower, intimate. Once this is done, we can stop pretending. Sell the house, liquidate his retirement accounts. We need to be patient, Veronica interrupted. 2 years, maybe 3. Let the accounts grow while he's institutionalized. Then we can claim we need to sell assets for his ongoing care. No one questions medical expenses. You're brilliant, Murray said. Cold, but brilliant. Veronica laughed. I learned from the best. My father stole millions from his business partners and never spent a day in jail. It's all about documentation and narrative control. Jake stopped the recording, his mind racing. Veronica's father, Gerald Winters, had been a local businessman who died 5 years ago. Jake had always been told he'd retire to Florida, but stole millions? There was a story there he'd never known. He continued through the files. More recordings of Veronica and Murray, including discussions of how they'd met at a psychiatric conference where Veronica had been representing a client, how the affair had started immediately, apparently, and their long-term plans: liquidate everything, move to California, start fresh. There were also documents: Murray's fraudulent psychiatric evaluation of Jake, a draft petition for conservatorship, emails between Veronica and a private investigator she'd hired to dig up any past incidents that could be used against Jake. The PI had found nothing. Jake's record was clean. Most chilling was a handwritten note in Veronica's precise script. Long-term contingencies. If Jay becomes problem after commitment, RM can adjust medication levels. Oversedation accidents happen. Life insurance pays double for accidental death. Jake photographed every document, backed up every file, and created 3 separate encrypted copies on different cloud services. Then he sat back and thought. Veronica and Murray had built an impressive frame. They'd been methodical, careful, patient, but they'd made mistakes, the recordings being the biggest. They'd also underestimated him, which was perhaps the most critical error. Jake pulled out a legal pad and began writing. Their weaknesses, overconfidence, recorded themselves committing conspiracy. Murray's past malpractice, pattern of unethical behavior. The judge, likely corrupt or incompetent. The timeline, they're rushing now, which creates opportunities for mistakes. Veronica's narcissism, thinks she's inherited her father's criminal genius. My advantages, they don't know I know. I have evidence they don't realize exists. My professional skills, forensic accounting, investigation. Miranda's legal expertise and connections. Clean record, no history of mental illness or violence. Credible witnesses, colleagues, friends, Riley's teachers. Their plan, stage an incident in the next week. Emergency, psychiatric hold. Conservatorship within 30 days. Long-term institutionalization and asset theft. My plan. Jake stared at the blank space below those words. What was his plan? He could go to the police with the evidence, but Veronica would claim the recordings were fake or taken out of context. She had a judge in her pocket who'd already be sympathetic to her narrative. Legal battles took months, and Jake might be committed before any investigation concluded. No, he needed something more decisive. Something that would expose Veronica and Murray completely, protect Riley, and ensure they couldn't wriggle out with expensive lawyers and sympathetic judges. He needed to let them think they were winning, let them execute their plan, but on his terms, in a controlled way that would expose them publicly and irrefutably. An idea began forming. It was risky, possibly illegal, definitely extreme. But Jake had spent years studying how criminals thought, how they operated, how they made mistakes when they thought they'd won. He'd give Veronica and Murray exactly what they wanted, a public breakdown, an incident that would justify their emergency petition. But that incident would be theater, carefully staged and fully documented. He'd get himself committed, voluntarily, in a way, and from inside the facility, with Miranda's help on the outside, they'd gather the final pieces of evidence they needed. Because the best way to expose a conspiracy was to let the conspirators think they'd succeeded. That's when they got sloppy. That's when they celebrated and revealed everything. Jake picked up his phone and texted Miranda, I have a plan. It's unconventional. We need to meet tonight with someone who understands psychiatric facilities from the inside. Her response, I know a nurse. Former psych ward at Briarwood. She quit because of ethics violations she witnessed. I'll set up a meeting. Jake spent the rest of the afternoon researching. Briarwood Psychiatric Facility was exactly where Murray had staff privileges, where he planned to have Jake committed. Jake found news articles from 3 years ago about a patient who died there, ruled an accidental overdose of prescribed medication, though the family had tried to sue for negligence. The case had been dismissed. Another patient settled out of court. Pattern of overmedication, improper supervision. Murray's name appeared in the records as attending physician on both cases. This wasn't just about Jake. Murray had hurt people before and would hurt others. Veronica had enabled it for her own greed. They deserved more than exposure. They deserved to experience the fear and helplessness they'd planned for him. That evening, Jake met Miranda and Camille Hinton, the former Briarwood nurse, at a quiet bar 40 miles from home. Camille was in her 50s, tired-eyed but sharp. She listened to Jake's summary, reviewed the evidence on his laptop, and nodded grimly. Roman Murray is a monster, she said flatly. I reported him twice. Patients over-medicated to the point of zombification. One man came in with mild depression and left 6 months later barely functional. Murray had him on a cocktail that would sedate a horse. When I confronted him, he had me fired. Can you testify to that? Jake asked. With the right legal protection, yes. What about facility protocols? Jake asked. If someone was committed there, what are the procedures? Camille explained the 72-hour hold process, the evaluation periods, the medication schedules. She described how Murray operated, taking cases of wealthy patients, diagnosing them with severe conditions that justified long-term stays and aggressive treatment, then billing insurance and families for hundreds of thousands in care. He's running a medical fraud scheme, Jake said, using psychiatric commitment as the mechanism. Exactly. And he and staff will look the other way because he shares the profits. Jake looked at Miranda. Here's my plan. We let Veronica and Murray commit me. I go into Briarwood, but I'll have people on the outside documenting everything, Miranda building the legal case, maybe even federal investigators if we can get them involved. And inside, I'll gather first-hand evidence of Murray's operation. That's insane, Miranda said. You'd be trapped in there, drugged, unable to defend yourself. Not if I don't actually take the medication. Cheek it, hide it, whatever. Camille can coach me. Jake turned to the nurse. Can it be done? Camille considered. Risky, but yes. You need to be smart. Some meds are injected, but most are pills. If you're careful, you can avoid actually ingesting them. But Jake, even a few days in Briarwood under Murray's supervision is dangerous. If he realizes you're faking, he could harm you, claim you became violent, justify restraints, or actual force medication. I've spent 15 years getting white-collar criminals to hang themselves with their own arrogance, Jake said. Murray thinks he's untouchable. Veronica thinks she's smarter than me. Those assumptions are their weakness. Miranda leaned forward. What about Riley? That's the key. Before any of this happens, I need to document my current mental state with independent psychiatrists. I need witnesses who can testify I was lucid and competent before the incident. And I need to make sure Riley's protected, maybe with your family, Miranda, while this plays out. Miranda nodded. My sister's a teacher. No kids. She'd love to help. Then here's the timeline, Jake said. This weekend, I'll arrange the documentation, psychiatrist evaluation, video statement, notarized affidavits of my mental competency. Monday or Tuesday, I'll give Veronica the incident she's waiting for. Something public, dramatic, but ultimately harmless. She and Murray will move fast with their petition. I get committed, and then we spring the trap. What trap? Camille asked. Jake smiled, though there was no humor in it. They want to make me look crazy and steal my life? Fine. But while they're busy counting my money and celebrating, I'll be gathering evidence of their conspiracy and Murray's medical fraud. And when we're ready, we'll bring it all down on them. Publicly, legally, and with federal charges that no corrupt judge can dismiss. It could work, Miranda said slowly. But Jake, if anything goes wrong, if Murray realizes what you're doing, you could be stuck in there for real. I know, but if I don't do this, I'm finished anyway. They've built a perfect trap. The only way out is to turn it back on them. Jake looked at both women. I need to know you're with me, because once this starts, there's no going back. Miranda and Camille exchanged glances, then nodded. I'm in, Miranda said. This is the most unconventional legal strategy I've ever been part of, but sometimes unconventional is what wins. I'll help however I can, Camille added. Murray destroyed careers and lives. Someone needs to stop him. Jake raised his glass. To justice. The creative kind. They clinked glasses, three unlikely conspirators about to wage war against two predators who'd made the fatal mistake of underestimating their prey. Chapter 4. The Performance. Saturday morning, Jake drove Riley to Miranda's house under the pretense of a play date with Miranda's daughter. Veronica had barely looked up from her phone when he told her, too absorbed in texting. Probably Murray, Jake thought bitterly. In Miranda's living room, Jake sat Riley down. This was the hardest part. Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something serious. Riley's eyes went wide. At 8, she was perceptive enough to know when something was truly wrong. Is it about the envelope? Yes. And I need you to be very brave. Jake took her hands. Your mom and I are having some grown-up problems. I can't explain everything right now, but I'm going to have to go away for a little while. Maybe a few days, maybe a week. Are you and Mommy getting divorced? Riley's voice was small. I don't know yet, baby. But whatever happens, I need you to remember something. I love you more than anything in the world. And everything I'm about to do is to make sure you're safe and we can be together. Can you trust me? Riley nodded, tears welling. I trust you, Daddy. Good. You're going to stay with Mrs. Jenkins's sister for a few days. It'll be like a little vacation. And when I come back, things are going to be different but better. I promise. Miranda brought her sister Tabitha, Elliot, into the room. Tabitha was warm and maternal, and Riley took to her immediately. Within an hour, Riley was helping bake cookies in Tabitha's kitchen, temporarily distracted. Jake finalized the rest of his preparations. He'd spent Friday meeting with Dr. Eugene Munoz, an independent psychiatrist with impeccable credentials. Munoz had conducted a thorough evaluation and concluded, as Jake knew he would, that Jake showed no signs of mental illness, psychosis, or instability. The evaluation was notarized and copies were distributed to 3 separate attorneys. Jake also recorded a video statement, calm and articulate, explaining his current situation and mental state. He described his relationship with Veronica, his career, his life with Riley, all evidence that he was competent and functional. The video was dated, witnessed, and secured with Miranda's firm. Now came the hard part. Monday afternoon, Jake went to Riley's soccer practice. He'd texted Veronica that morning, "Need to talk tonight. Something's wrong, and I can't ignore it anymore." Her response had been carefully concerned. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "No, I'm not okay, but I don't want to discuss it over text." He could imagine Veronica's excitement. Jake was finally cracking. The stress she'd been manufacturing, the low-grade drugging, the gaslighting, it was all working. She'd probably called Murray immediately to prepare for the emergency petition. At the soccer field, Jake made small talk with other parents, acted completely normal. Coach Chris Jenkins was there, setting up drills. Near the end of practice, Jake approached him. "Chris, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Sure, Jake. Everything okay?" "Actually, no." Jake pitched his voice just loud enough for several nearby parents to hear. "I need to ask you something about my wife." Chris looked confused. "Veronica? What about her? Has she been asking you to lie about me? To say I've been acting strange at practices?" Chris's face went red. "Jake, she did mention she was concerned about you. Asked if I'd noticed, because I think she's trying to set me up for something." Jake's voice rose slightly, controlled but emotional. "I found some things. Evidence of an affair. Plans to, I don't know, maybe have me committed? I know how that sounds, but I'm not crazy. I'm just..." "Jake, maybe you should calm down," another parent interjected, stepping closer. "I am calm," Jake shouted, then caught himself. "Perfect." He took a breath, ran his hand through his hair. I'm sorry. I don't know who to trust anymore." Several parents had pulled out phones. Some were recording. "Excellent." Chris put a hand on Jake's shoulder. "Why don't you sit down? You seem really stressed." "I'm stressed because my wife is plotting against me." Jake's voice cracked convincingly. "And no one believes me because that's what she wants. She wants everyone to think I'm paranoid, unstable. But I have evidence." "What evidence?" Chris asked gently. "Recordings. Photographs. A whole conspiracy." Jake was breathing hard now, selling the performance. "Her and some psychiatrist named Murray. They're planning to take everything, my daughter, my money, my freedom. They're going to lock me up and steal my life." The gathered parents exchanged worried glances. Someone murmured about calling someone, maybe Veronica. "Don't call her," Jake said sharply. "She's part of it." That's when the soccer field parking lot lights seemed too bright, when the concerned faces around him felt claustrophobic. Jake grabbed his head. "I need to go. I need to think. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have come here. He stumbled toward his car. Behind him, he heard Chris calling his name, heard parents talking in worried tones. Perfect. Exactly the public breakdown Veronica needed for her petition. Jake drove home carefully, legally, stopping at every light. When he arrived, Veronica was waiting in the driveway, phone to her ear. She hung up when she saw him. "Jake, Coach Jenkins just called me. He said you had some kind of episode at practice, that you were yelling about conspiracies, and where's Riley?" Jake interrupted, looking past her into the house. "At Melissa's house for a sleepover." "Jake, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "I know about Murray." Veronica's face went carefully blank. "What? Who's Murray?" "Dr. Roman Murray. Your psychiatrist boyfriend. The man you're planning to use to have me committed." Jake watched her face, saw the micro-expression of panic before she controlled it. Jake, you're not making sense. I think you need help. I'm sure you do. That's the plan, isn't it? Get me committed, take control of everything. And then what? Keep me drugged until I'm no longer a problem? You sound paranoid. This is exactly what I've been worried about. Veronica pulled out her phone. I'm calling Dr. Murray. He can help you. I'm sure he can. Jake laughed bitterly. Tell him I'll be waiting. He turned and walked into the house, went straight to his office, and locked the door. Through the window, he saw Veronica on her phone, pacing, animated. Calling Murray, no doubt. Telling him it was time. Jake texted Miranda. Phase 1 complete. She's calling him now. Miranda's response. I'll monitor the court system. Emergency petition will probably be filed tonight or tomorrow morning. Are you sure about this? Too late to back out now. Jake sat in his office and waited. He'd just painted himself as paranoid, unstable, and potentially dangerous. He'd done it publicly, with witnesses and recordings. Veronica had the perfect justification for her emergency petition. Now the game was truly on. Chapter 5. Inside Briarwood. The police came Tuesday morning with a court order. Jake had been expecting them, but the reality was still jarring. 2 officers at his door, Veronica behind them with carefully practiced tears, a judge's signature authorizing an emergency 72-hour psychiatric hold. Mr. Ellison, we need you to come with us, the lead officer said. He was professional but firm. There's been a petition filed expressing concern for your mental health and safety. I understand, Jake said calmly. He'd been up all night, had refused the coffee Veronica offered, no doubt drugged, and was running on pure adrenaline and determination. Can I ask who filed the petition? Your wife, sir, with supporting testimony from Coach Jenkins and other witnesses to yesterday's incident. Jake nodded. Jenkins had been scared into it, probably thinking he was helping. The other witnesses were genuinely concerned parents who'd seen what looked like a breakdown. All part of the plan. I'll cooperate, Jake said, but I want it noted that I'm not resisting and I'm cognizant of what's happening. I also want an attorney present. You can request one at the facility, sir. Jake glanced at Veronica. She looked away, unable to meet his eyes. Good. She should feel guilty, even if it wasn't stopping her. The drive to Briarwood Psychiatric Facility took 30 minutes. The building was modern, institutional, designed to look welcoming, but fundamentally a lockdown facility. Jake was processed at intake. Personal belongings confiscated, brief medical exam, then escorted to a private room in the evaluation ward. Dr. Roman Murray appeared within an hour. He was exactly as he'd looked in the photographs. Handsome, polished, with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Ellison, I'm Dr. Murray. I'll be overseeing your evaluation. I know who you are, Jake said coldly. You're the man sleeping with my wife. The man planning to steal my life. Murray's smile didn't falter. I can see you're experiencing some paranoid ideation. That's actually quite common in cases like yours. We're going to help you. I'm sure you are. That's why you've already diagnosed me without ever meeting me, right? That's why you've prepared a treatment plan designed to keep me medicated and compliant. For just a second, Murray's mask slipped. Surprise flickered across his face. He recovered quickly. Those are concerning statements, Mr. Ellison. They suggest the kind of persecution complex we need to address. I'm going to start you on a mild anxiolytic to help you relax. A nurse entered with a small cup containing 2 pills and water. Jake recognized the setup from Camille's coaching. He took the pills, made a show of swallowing them with water, and opened his mouth for inspection. The nurse nodded. Good. These'll help you feel calmer. The moment they left, Jake spit the pills into his hand and flushed them down the toilet. Camille had warned him. The first few days, they'd use pills. Later, if he seemed resistant, they might switch to injections, which would be much harder to avoid. Over the next 2 days, Jake played his role perfectly. He took every pill offered, cheek-ing them and disposing of them later. He acted groggy when staff was around, as if the medication was working. He answered Murray's questions during evaluation sessions in ways that were just coherent enough not to raise suspicion, but troubled enough to justify continued treatment. Tell me about your relationship with your wife, Murray prompted, during one session. "She's lying to you," Jake said, letting his voice sound slightly slurred. "She's planning something. I have evidence." "What evidence?" "Recordings. Photographs. I know what you're doing." Murray made notes, his expression professionally neutral. "These delusions about conspiracy, do you experience them often?" "They're not delusions. Of course they feel real to you. That's the nature of paranoid psychosis." Jake wanted to reach across the desk and strangle him. Instead, he played confused, frustrated, exactly what a genuinely mentally ill patient might feel when their reality was being dismissed. On day 3, Miranda's investigator, a former FBI agent named Patrick Fisher, visited as Jake's attorney. Briarwood had to allow attorney-client visits. It was Jake's legal right. They met in a private consultation room. "How are you holding up?" Fisher asked, voice low. "Tired. Hungry. But fine. They think I'm taking the meds." "Good. We've been busy on the outside." Fisher pulled out a tablet, showed Jake encrypted documents. "Miranda filed a counterpetition with a different judge, one Murray doesn't control. We're arguing unlawful commitment, presenting your psychiatric evaluation from Dr. Munoz, the video statement, everything showing you were competent before the incident." "What about Veronica and Murray?" "They're getting sloppy. Veronica's been accessing your bank accounts, trying to transfer funds. We've flagged the transactions with your bank's fraud department. Murray's been billing your insurance for extensive treatment you've barely received. We're documenting all of it. And federal interest? That's the big news. The FBI has an ongoing investigation into Medicare fraud at Briarwood. When I reached out to my former colleagues with information about Murray's operation, they were very interested. They're preparing to raid the facility, but they're waiting for more evidence." "How much more?" "Enough to nail Murray and his accomplices. Your case is the keystone, but they need to document his broader pattern. We're talking weeks, maybe a month." Jake's stomach sank. "I can't stay in here for a month. Eventually they'll realize I'm not actually taking the medication. Then we accelerate. How much evidence of Murray's malpractice can you gather from inside?" Jake considered. "If I can access patient files, medication records, billing information, probably quite a bit. But I'd need help from staff. Camille's been reaching out to other former employees. There's a file clerk named Shirley Whalen who's fed up with what Murray's doing. She might be willing to help if we can protect her legally. Set it up, but carefully. If Murray catches on, we'll be careful. In the meantime, keep playing your role. Act like you're getting worse, not better. Give Murray confidence." Jake nodded. "When does Veronica visit?" "She hasn't. She's been too busy with Murray, planning how to liquidate your assets. But she's filed for emergency custody of Riley, claiming you're a danger." Rage flared in Jake's chest, but he controlled it. "Riley's safe, with Tabitha, happy, healthy, asking about you. We're preparing her to testify if it comes to that, age appropriately, just that she's never seen you act violent or unstable." "Good. I want her protected from all this as much as possible." Fisher left after an hour. Jake returned to his room and lay on the uncomfortable bed, staring at the ceiling. 3 days in Briarwood felt like 3 weeks. The constant surveillance, the pretense of being medicated, the institutional atmosphere. It was wearing. But every moment he was in here, he was gathering evidence. Every interaction with Murray was another piece of proof of malpractice. Every forged medical note, every falsified observation, every unnecessary medication order was another nail in Murray's coffin. Jake just had to hold on long enough to drive them all in. That evening, Murray visited again. "I'm concerned about your progress, Mr. Ellison. You don't seem to be responding to treatment. I'm going to increase your dosage and add a second medication." "What medication?" "An antipsychotic. It will help with the paranoid delusions." Jake knew what that meant. Heavier drugs, possibly injected. He was running out of time. "Fine," he said dully. "Whatever you think is best, doctor." Murray smiled. "We'll have you feeling better soon." After he left, Jake texted Miranda on the contraband phone Fisher had smuggled in. "They're escalating. Antipsychotics next. We need to move faster." "Understood. We'll accelerate the timeline. FBI is moving up their raid." "Hang on." Jake deleted the messages and hid the phone. Then he lay back down and began planning phase 3 of his revenge. Veronica and Murray thought they were winning. They thought Jake was helpless, trapped, drugged, and defeated. They had no idea the trap was about to snap shut around them. Chapter 6. The Breaking Point. On day 7, everything went wrong. Jake had been meeting with Shirley Whalen, the file clerk, in stolen moments when she delivered meal trays. She'd been covertly copying patient files, evidence of Murray's systematic overmedication of wealthy patients, fraudulent diagnoses, and billing schemes. Jake had been photographing documents with a hidden phone, building a devastating case. But that morning, during Murray's evaluation session, the psychiatrist's demeanor changed. "Mr. Ellison, I've been reviewing the medication logs. It seems you've been receiving your doses consistently, but your blood work shows negligible levels of the prescribed drugs in your system." Murray's smile was dangerous. "Care to explain that?" Jake's mind raced. "They'd done blood tests?" That hadn't been part of the pattern. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do. I think you've been pretending to take your medication, which raises interesting questions about your actual mental state." Murray leaned forward. "You're not sick at all, are you? This is all an act." "You're the one who's acting," Jake said, abandoning pretense. "I know everything. The affair with Veronica, the plan to steal my assets, your medical fraud scheme. I've been gathering evidence against you." Murray's face hardened. "Evidence? From inside a psychiatric facility where you've been committed for paranoid delusions? Good luck with that credibility. I have recordings from my house. Your voice, Veronica's voice, discussing the whole conspiracy. I have documentation of your malpractice, your past lawsuits, your pattern of fraudulent diagnoses." "Had," Murray corrected. Past tense. "Because right now, all of that evidence is on the outside, and you're in here. Do you know what can happen to patients who become violent, Mr. Ellison? Who pose a danger to themselves and others?" Jake stood. "You're threatening me? I'm informing you of procedures. Violent patients require restraints, heavy sedation. Sometimes, tragically, patients in extreme states harm themselves despite our best efforts. It's devastating, but it happens." The threat was clear. If Jake didn't cooperate, Murray would escalate to actual forced medication or worse. And inside Briarwood, who would question it? Murray controlled the facility, the staff, the documentation. "You won't get away with this," Jake said. "I already have. Your wife has conservatorship. Your assets are being transferred as we speak. Your daughter is being told you're too sick to see her. And you're going to stay here as long as I say, under whatever treatment I prescribe. Unless what? Unless you sign over power of attorney willingly. Cooperate with the conservatorship. Agree to Veronica's custody terms, and I'll allow your release in a few months, once the asset transfers are complete. You'll be broken alone, but free." Jake stared at him. Murray actually believed he'd won. That Jake would simply surrender everything, his daughter, his life, to avoid being permanently imprisoned. "I need time to think," Jake said. "You have 24 hours. After that, I'm starting for medications. You won't be able to avoid those." Murray stood. "Choose wisely, Mr. Ellison." After Murray left, Jake immediately texted Miranda. "Compromised. Murray knows I haven't been taking meds. Threatening for sedation. Need extraction now." The response came quickly. "FBI raid scheduled for tomorrow night. Can you hold on 30 more hours?" Jake looked at the locked door, the reinforced windows, the camera in the corner of his room. He was trapped in a facility controlled by a man who just threatened his life. 30 hours might as well be 30 days. He texted back, "Not sure. Murray's moving to 4 meds. Once that starts, I'm finished. Hold on. We're moving up the timeline." Jake paced his room, thinking. He'd underestimated Murray's paranoia. The blood tests were smart, a verification Murray had implemented precisely because he'd been caught before. Jake should have anticipated it. Now he needed new play. That evening, Shirley Whalen appeared with his dinner tray. She looked terrified. "They know," she whispered. "Murray knows someone's been accessing files. He's running an investigation. I'm sorry, Mr. Ellison. I can't help anymore. It's okay. You've done enough. Just one more thing. Can you get a message to my attorney?" "What message?" "Tell him it's time for the nuclear option. Shirley nodded and quickly left. Jake picked at his food, barely eating. The nuclear option was a plan he discussed with Miranda and Fisher in case things went completely sideways. It was risky, possibly illegal, and would burn every bridge. But it was the only move he had left. At midnight, Jake used the hidden phone to call Miranda directly. "We need to do it. Tonight. Jake, if we execute now, you'll be exposed to criminal liability. We haven't fully established your defense. If we wait, I'll be chemically lobotomized or dead. Murray's cornered and dangerous. We spring the trap now, or we lose everything." There was a long pause. Then, "Okay, I'll make the calls. But Jake, once this starts, it could get ugly fast." "I know. Do it." Jake destroyed the phone and flushed the pieces. Then he lay down on his bed and waited for dawn. The next morning, Murray entered Jake's room with 2 orderlies and a nurse carrying in 4 kit. "Good morning, Mr. Ellison. Have you made your decision?" "Yes," Jake said. "Go to hell." Murray nodded to the orderlies. "Restrain him." The orderlies moved forward. Jake didn't resist. Fighting would only justify their actions. They strapped him to the bed, securing his arms. The nurse began prepping his for. "Last chance," Murray said. "Sign the documents, cooperate, and this gets easier." "Or what? You'll kill me and make it look like an accident? Like you did with those other patients?" Murray's eyes narrowed. "Careful, Mr. Ellison. Paranoid outbursts like that are exactly why you need help." As the nurse inserted the 4-needle, Jake heard it. Sirens. Multiple vehicles approaching fast. Murray heard them too. His expression shifted from confident to confused to alarmed in quick succession. The orderlies looked at each other nervously. "Doctor, should we?" The door burst open. FBI agents in tactical gear poured into the room, weapons drawn. "FBI, everyone down. Down!" Murray backed against the wall, hands up. The orderlies and nurse dropped immediately. One agent moved to Jake's bedside, quickly removing the restraints. "Mr. Ellison? I'm Special Agent Tyler Parsons. We're getting you out of here." Jake sat up, rubbing his wrists where the restraints had dug in. About time. Throughout the facility, Jake could hear doors slamming, agents shouting commands, patients confused and calling out. The FBI had descended on Briarwood en masse. Parsons turned to Murray. "Dr. Roman Murray, you're under arrest for Medicare fraud, medical malpractice, conspiracy to commit fraud, and false imprisonment. You have the right to remain silent." Murray's face had gone pale. As the agent cuffed him, Murray stared at Jake. This was all a setup?" Jake stood, feeling unsteady but triumphant. "Did you really think I'd just let you destroy my life? I'm a forensic accountant, Murray. I've been building cases against people like you for 15 years. You never stood a chance." As agents led Murray away, Miranda appeared in the doorway with Patrick Fisher. "Jake, thank God. Are you okay?" "Tired, angry, but okay." Jake looked at her. "Veronica, being arrested right now at your house. The FBI has evidence of her involvement in the conspiracy. The recordings from your home, her communications with Murray, the attempted asset transfers. She's looking at fraud, conspiracy, and attempted kidnapping charges related to the custody manipulation." Jake closed his eyes briefly. It was done. The trap had sprung. Veronica and Murray were finished. And Riley, waiting at Tabitha's. "She's been asking for you." Miranda smiled. "You can see her as soon as the medics clear you." As Jake was escorted out of Briarwood, past rooms full of confused patients and panicked staff, past evidence boxes being loaded into FBI vans, past Murray and 3 other doctors in handcuffs, he felt the weight of the last week begin to lift. He'd gambled everything on an insane plan, letting himself be committed to a psychiatric facility, playing the role of victim while actually being the hunter. It had nearly gone wrong. But in the end, the trap had worked. Veronica and Murray had thought they were the predators. They'd learned too late that Jake Ellison was far more dangerous than they'd ever imagined. Chapter 7. The Aftermath. The next 72 hours were a blur of medical examinations, FBI debriefings, and legal proceedings. Jake was cleared by multiple independent physicians. No drugs in his system despite Murray's attempted for. No signs of mental illness. Completely competent. The forced commitment was ruled unlawful, and Jake was released with a formal apology from a court. The evidence against Veronica and Murray was overwhelming. The recordings from Jake's home, which Miranda had legally preserved, captured their entire conspiracy in their own words. Murray's fraudulent psychiatric evaluation of Jake, created without ever meeting him, destroyed his medical credibility. The file clerk Shirley Whalen's testimony about systematic patient abuse and billing fraud at Briarwood exposed a scheme stretching back years, involving multiple doctors and administrators. And then there were the other victims. Once the FBI opened the investigation publicly, former Briarwood patients came forward with stories eerily similar to Jake's. Wealthy individuals committed under questionable circumstances, overmedicated, held longer than necessary, their assets drained by medical expenses. Murray had been running this scam for at least 5 years, with Veronica being his newest and most ambitious target. Jake sat in Miranda's law office on Thursday afternoon, Riley asleep on a couch nearby. She'd barely left his side since they'd reunited, terrified he'd disappear again. Jake had explained as gently as possible that Mommy had made some bad choices and wouldn't be living with them for a while, maybe a long while. Riley had cried, but she'd also said, "I knew something was wrong. That's why the envelope was so important." Smart kid. Jake's heart ached for what she'd been through, but he was grateful she'd been shielded from the worst of it. Miranda entered with Patrick Fisher and a new face, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit. "Jake, this is Assistant U.S. Attorney Belinda Sloan. She's heading up the prosecution." Sloan shook Jake's hand firmly. "Mr. Ellison, I wanted to meet you personally. Your case has cracked open one of the most brazen medical fraud schemes we've seen. Dr. Murray and his accomplices have been charged with 23 federal counts. Your wife is facing 15. What are we looking at for sentences?" Jake asked. "Murray's looking at 25 to 30 years minimum. The attempted murder charge, based on his threat to you and the suspicious deaths of 2 previous patients, adds significant time. He'll likely die in prison." Sloan's expression was grim satisfaction. "Your wife is facing 15 to 20 years. The conspiracy charges, attempted fraud, the custody manipulation, it's significant. Her attorney's already floating a plea deal, but we're not inclined to be generous." "Good," Jake said quietly. "She tried to destroy my life and harm my daughter. I want her to face full consequences." "She will. I promise you that." Sloan pulled out a folder. "There's also the matter of civil litigation. Several former Briarwood patients are filing lawsuits. Your testimony will be crucial. And frankly, you have grounds to sue both Murray and Veronica for damages, emotional distress, lost wages, defamation, attempted theft." "I want to talk about that," Miranda interjected. "Jake, you could potentially recover millions in damages. Your career was jeopardized, your reputation attacked, and you suffered significant trauma." Jake looked at Riley, still sleeping peacefully. "I want enough to secure Riley's future, college fund, therapy if she needs it, stability. The rest. I don't care about vengeance through money. I want them in prison where they belong." "That's admirable," Sloan said, "though I'd encourage you to seek fair compensation. What they did to you was monstrous." Over the next week, Jake focused on rebuilding. He moved back into his house. Veronica's belongings had been removed by court order. He returned to work, where his supervisor had been horrified to learn what happened and immediately offered full support and accommodations. He started therapy with Dr. Munoz to process the trauma of the false commitment and betrayal. And he spent every possible moment with Riley, rebuilding her sense of security and normalcy. One evening, as they were making dinner together, Riley's choice, spaghetti with excessive Parmesan, she asked, "Daddy, why did Mommy do those bad things?" Jake paused, choosing his words carefully. Sometimes adults make terrible choices because they want things they shouldn't have, or they stop caring about people they should love. Your mom got lost in her own selfishness. But that doesn't mean you did anything wrong, or that she didn't love you in her own way. "I'm mad at her," Riley said quietly, "but I'm also sad. That's okay. You can be both. You can feel complicated things about complicated situations." "Are you mad at her?" "I was. Now I'm mostly just sad that she threw away our family for money and someone who didn't deserve her loyalty. But you know what? We're going to be okay. You and me. We're going to be more than okay. Riley hugged him tightly. I'm glad you're home, Daddy. I was really scared when you were in that place. I was scared too, but I knew I had to get back to you no matter what. And I did. The trial was set for 6 months later, but Jake knew from Sloane's updates that Veronica's defense was collapsing. The evidence was simply too overwhelming. Her attorney had tried to argue she was manipulated by Murray, but the recording showed she'd been an enthusiastic, calculating partner in the conspiracy. She'd been the one to suggest the long-term plan, the one to research Jake's assets, the one to propose the insurance claim if Jake accidentally died while committed. Murray's defense was even weaker. His past malpractice settlements were admitted as evidence of pattern behavior. Former patients testified about his overmedication and fraudulent billing. Shirley Whalen and Camille Hinton both provided devastating testimony about his operation. In the FBI's forensic accounting, Jake had been consulted as an expert, ironically, revealed Murray had stolen over $4 million from patients and insurance companies over 5 years. 3 months after Jake's release, both defendants accepted plea deals. Veronica would serve 17 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole before 15. Murray would serve 30 years with no possibility of parole before 25. Jake attended the sentencing hearing. He debated whether to bring Riley, ultimately deciding against it, but having her write a victim impact statement that he read on her behalf. When it was his turn to speak, Jake stood before the judge and the defendants. Veronica wouldn't meet his eyes. Murray stared at him with undisguised hatred. Your Honor, what these two people did to me and my family was evil. Calculated, patient, cruel evil. They tried to steal my freedom, my sanity, my daughter, and my life. They would have succeeded if not for the courage of people like Miranda Jenkins, who risked professional consequences to expose them. Jake turned to face Veronica. You were my wife, the mother of my child. I trusted you with everything, and you repaid that trust by plotting my destruction. I hope you spend every day of your 17 years thinking about what you threw away, and I hope you come to understand that Riley deserves better than you ever gave her. Then he turned to Murray. And you're a predator who weaponized medicine to hurt vulnerable people. How many lives did you destroy before mine? How many people suffered because you saw them as profit opportunities? I hope your 30 years feel like 300. Jake sat back down. The judge delivered the formal sentence, and it was done. As Jake left the courthouse, Miranda met him on the steps. How do you feel? Tired, relieved, sad for Riley. Jake looked up at the gray sky, but mostly grateful. Grateful for you, for Fisher, for everyone who helped. I was so close to losing everything. You didn't lose. You fought back in one of the most ingenious ways I've ever seen, and you won. That matters. It does. But the cost. Jake shook his head. Riley lost her mother. I lost years off my life from stress. And I'll never fully trust anyone the same way again. That's the real crime, Miranda said quietly. They didn't just try to steal your assets. They tried to steal your ability to trust, to be vulnerable, to believe in people. Don't let them take that, Jake. Don't let them win that way. Jake considered her words. She was right. Veronica and Murray had tried to make him a victim, to break him. But he'd refused to break. He'd fought back with intelligence, courage, and strategy. And he'd won. Thank you, Miranda. For everything. Anytime. Though let's hope there's never a next time for something like this. Jake smiled. Agreed. Chapter 8. New Beginnings. 6 months after the sentencing, Jake's life had found a new rhythm. He and Riley had moved to a new house, smaller than the old one, but theirs alone, free from the toxic memories. Riley had started therapy with a child psychologist and was thriving in school, her natural resilience and the stable home Jake provided helping her heal. Jake had been promoted at work, his reputation enhanced rather than damaged by the ordeal. The story of the forensic accountant who dismantled the conspiracy against himself had made the professional rounds. He'd turned down numerous media interview requests, wanting to protect Riley's privacy. But he'd written a detailed account for a professional journal about financial crimes in medical settings, which had become required reading in forensic accounting programs. The civil lawsuit had settled out of court. The insurance companies that Murray had defrauded had sued him and Briarwood aggressively. As part of their settlement, they'd compensated Jake and other victims. Jake had placed Riley's share in a trust fund that would ensure her education and future security. He'd used his own portion to establish a nonprofit organization that provided legal aid to individuals fighting wrongful psychiatric commitment, a small tribute to Miranda's courage in helping him. On a Saturday morning in early spring, Jake and Riley were at the park. She was on the swings, pumping her legs and laughing. Jake watched from a nearby bench, grateful for the simple normalcy of it. "Mr. Ellison?" Jake turned to see a young man, maybe 25, approaching hesitantly. "Yes. I'm sorry to bother you. My name's Dwayne Powers. I was one of Dr. Murray's patients at Briarwood. I saw you interviewed on that forensic accounting podcast, and I just wanted to thank you." Jake gestured for him to sit. "You don't need to thank me. What happened to you shouldn't have happened to anyone. I was there for 4 months. My family committed me because I was having a rough time after losing my job, just depression, but Murray diagnosed me with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. Kept me so medicated I could barely function. By the time they let me out, I'd lost my apartment, my girlfriend, everything. If you hadn't exposed him, I'd probably still be there." "What are you doing now?" Jake asked. "Slowly rebuilding. Got a job at a tech startup. Seeing a real therapist. It's hard, but I'm getting there." Dwayne smiled. "And I'm alive and free, which I wouldn't be without you. So thank you." After Dwayne left, Jake sat for a while, thinking. He'd spent so much time focused on Veronica and Murray's punishment that he'd lost sight of the broader impact. Murray had hurt dozens of people. The exposure in prosecution had freed them all, had shut down Briarwood's fraudulent operation, had sent a message to other predators in the medical system. Jake's suffering hadn't been meaningless. It had led to justice not just for him, but for people like Dwayne. "Daddy, watch this," Riley called. She was doing tricks on the monkey bars, fearless and happy. "I'm watching, sweetheart." That evening, Jake got a call from Miranda. "Hey, got some news. Veronica's attorney filed an appeal. It was denied. She's going to serve the full sentence." "Good," Jake said simply. There was a time when he'd have felt more triumph, vindication, maybe even residual anger. Now he just felt a quiet satisfaction that justice had held. "There's something else." Veronica sent a letter to Riley. The prison screened it, and her attorney forwarded it to me. "I wanted to check with you before deciding whether to give it to Riley." Jake's stomach tightened. "What does it say?" "It's an apology. Surprisingly genuine, actually. She acknowledges what she did was wrong. Says she understands if Riley never wants to speak to her again, but wanted Riley to know she loves her and regrets destroying their family. No excuses, no blame shifting. Just remorse." Jake was quiet for a long moment. "I need to think about it. Riley's doing so well right now. I don't want to disrupt her healing." "Understood. I'll hold on to it. You can decide later." After hanging up, Jake thought about Veronica. 17 years in federal prison was a long time to reflect on your choices. Maybe she was genuinely remorseful. Maybe she'd finally understood the magnitude of what she'd done. Or maybe she was just lonely and desperate. Either way, it wasn't Jake's problem anymore. Veronica had made her choices, and now she lived with the consequences. His only concern was Riley, and whether hearing from her mother would help or hurt. He decided to wait. Riley was 9 now, still young. When she was older, if she wanted to know what her mother had written, Jake would show her. But for now, his job was to keep her safe and let her be a kid. That night, as Jake tucked Riley into bed, she said, "I had a dream about Mommy last night." "Yeah? What happened?" She was sad. She said she was sorry. "I told her I forgave her, but I was still mad." Riley looked up at Jake. "Is that okay? To forgive someone but still be mad?" "Absolutely. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending everything's fine. It just means you're not letting the hurt control you anymore." "Have you forgiven Mommy?" Jay considered the question honestly. "I'm working on it. Some days are easier than others. But I'm trying because carrying around anger and hatred would hurt me more than it would hurt her. That's what my therapist says too." "Your therapist is smart." Riley smiled. "So are you, Daddy. You saved us. We saved each other, kiddo." Chapter 9. Full circle. 2 years after the trial, Jake stood in front of a conference room full of forensic accounting students at Temple University. He'd been invited to speak about his career, but everyone knew why they were really there. They wanted to hear about the case. Financial crimes aren't always about stealing money from companies, Jake said, clicking to his next slide. Sometimes the crime is about stealing someone's life. And sometimes the forensic accountant becomes the victim. He walked them through the case, carefully protecting Riley's privacy, but honestly about the conspiracy, the false commitment, the plan to steal his assets. He explained how he'd used his professional skills to fight back, how he'd gathered evidence, how he'd turned the trap back on his enemies. The key lesson here, Jake concluded, is that documentation is everything. Veronica and Murray recorded themselves committing conspiracy. That arrogance, that certainty that they were untouchable, that's what destroyed them. Never underestimate the power of evidence, and never assume you're too smart to be caught. A student raised her hand. But you did something similar, right? You recorded them too, gathered evidence covertly. Isn't that hypocritical? Fair question. The difference is context and legality. They were recording me without my knowledge or consent in my own home to build a false narrative. I discovered those recordings and used them as evidence of their crime. I also got independent verification of my mental competency before their plan escalated. Every step I took was either legal or defensible. Their entire scheme was criminal from the start. Another student asked, "Do you regret how you handled it?" Going into the psychiatric facility seems incredibly risky. Every day, Jake admitted, it could have gone catastrophically wrong. If Murray had forced 4 medication earlier, if the FBI raid had been delayed another day, if any number of variables had shifted, I might still be locked up. I wouldn't recommend my approach. But I was desperate, and sometimes desperate times call for unorthodox solutions. After the lecture, Jake headed home. He'd started dating someone, a teacher named Tabitha Elliott, ironically Miranda's sister, who'd helped protect Riley during the crisis. They'd grown close over the past year, bonding over their shared trauma and mutual commitment to Riley's well-being. It was slow, careful, both of them damaged in different ways by past betrayals. But it was real, and it was good. Riley, now 10 years old, was flourishing. She decided she wanted to be a lawyer like Mrs. Jenkins, so I can help people who are being hurt. Jake couldn't have been prouder. That evening, as Jake and Riley were making dinner, their Saturday tradition, she brought up something that had clearly been on her mind. "Daddy, I want to visit Mommy." Jake's hands stilled over the vegetables he was chopping. "You do. Not to live with her or anything. Just to visit. To talk. My therapist thinks it might help me process things." Jake set down the knife and turned to face her. "Riley, you know your mom is in prison because she did terrible things. Things that hurt me and would have hurt you. I know, but she's still my mom. And I have things I want to say to her. Things I need to say." Jake studied his daughter's face. She was mature beyond her years, wise in ways that broke his heart because she'd earned that wisdom through pain. But she was also strong, resilient, and ultimately healthy. "Okay," Jake said. "If this is what you need, we'll set it up. But I'll be there with you, and we'll prepare with your therapist first. And Riley, if at any point you change your mind, that's okay too." "I won't change my mind. I need to do this." 3 weeks later, Jake and Riley sat across from Veronica in a prison visitation room. Veronica had aged dramatically, gray streaks in her hair, lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She looked small in her prison uniform, diminished. When she saw Riley, tears immediately streamed down her face. "Baby, I'm not your baby," Riley said firmly. "I'm here because I have things to say, and then I'm leaving. Maybe I'll come back. Maybe I won't. But you're going to listen." Veronica nodded, not trusting her voice. Riley pulled out a piece of paper, notes she'd prepared with her therapist. "You hurt Daddy. You tried to destroy our family for money. You were going to take me away from him, and you didn't even care how much that would hurt me. That's not love. That's selfishness." "I know," Veronica whispered. "Riley, I'm so sorry. I'm not done." Riley's voice was steady. "You made me give Daddy that envelope. You used me as part of your plan without even knowing it. When Mrs. Jenkins gave me those papers, she was protecting our family from you. Do you understand that? Someone else had to protect us because my own mom wouldn't. Veronica was openly sobbing now. Jake wanted to comfort Riley, to shield her from this, but he also knew she needed to do this. I'm really mad at you, Riley continued. And I'm sad, because I remember when you were nice, when we did fun things together. I remember when I thought you loved us. But you chose money and some stupid man over me and Daddy. And that's not something I can just forget. I don't expect you to forget, Veronica managed. Or forgive me. I needed you to know that I'm sorry. That I think about you every single day. That I know what I destroyed, and I wish I could take it all back. Riley folded her paper. I'm going to try to forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because Daddy says that forgiveness is for me, not for you. But I'm never going to forget. And I'm never going to trust you again. I understand. I might visit again, or I might not. But either way, I'm okay. Daddy and I are okay. We have a good life without you. So you don't get to feel sorry for yourself about how I'm doing. We're doing great. There was a fierce pride in Riley's voice that made Jake's chest tighten with emotion. His daughter, his strong, brave, brilliant daughter, was going to be just fine. As they left the prison, Riley was quiet. Jake let her process, didn't push for conversation. Finally, as they got into the car, she said, I needed to see that she was really sorry, that it wasn't just words in a letter. And she is sorry, but that doesn't change what she did. And it doesn't mean I have to let her back into my life. You're absolutely right. Riley looked at her father. Daddy, can we get ice cream? Jake laughed, the emotional whiplash somehow perfectly appropriate. Absolutely, sweetheart. As they drove toward town, Jake reflected on the past 2 years. He'd been through hell, betrayed by his wife, nearly destroyed by a conspiracy, forced to fight for his freedom and his daughter. But he'd survived. More than survived, he'd won. Veronica was in prison for 15 more years. Murray would likely die behind bars. The Briarwood scandal had led to nationwide reforms in psychiatric commitment procedures and oversight. Jake's nonprofit had helped dozens of wrongfully committed individuals. And Riley was thriving, strong, resilient, and loved. The envelope that had started everything. That small manila envelope delivered by an 8-year-old girl coming home from soccer practice had been the catalyst for justice. Miranda Jenkins's courage in exposing the conspiracy had saved Jake's life and torn apart a predatory scheme. Sometimes Jake thought the bad guys do get caught. Sometimes the traps they set for others spring shut on them instead. And sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys win. Daddy, Riley said, pulling him from his thoughts. What are you smiling about? Just thinking about how lucky I am to have you. I'm lucky to have you too. You're the best dad in the whole world. Well, I don't know about the whole world. The whole world, Riley insisted. You're smart and brave, and you protected me from the bad guys. That's pretty much the definition of best dad. Jake reached over and squeezed her hand. I'll try to live up to that. You already do. They drove into the evening, toward ice cream and home, and the future they'd fought so hard to protect. The past couldn't be undone, and the scars would always be there. But they'd survived the worst that Veronica and Murray could throw at them. And in the end, that victory, that simple, hard-won survival, was everything.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.